The factory basement was quiet, except for the buzz of old lights and the hum of machines left running overnight. It was close to midnight when Marcus Vance, the night janitor, pushed his cart down the narrow hallway of the research lab in Akron, Ohio. Most people barely noticed him during the day, but that week, his name had been pinned to a problem. A broken piece of lab equipment had been blamed on janitorial error, even though Marcus knew he had only wiped the counters. Standing before it, flashlight in hand, he made a choice. Marcus's life was simple and repetitive. He clocked in when everyone else left, swept floors, emptied bins and wiped down benches nobody thanked him for. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. The scientist never remembered his name, just called him the janitor. Still, Marcus didn't complain. He was used to being invisible, but being accused of breaking $1 million piece of equipment wasn't just insulting, it was dangerous. He couldn't afford to lose this job. That accusation gnawed at him all night as he circled the halls with his mop and cart. Everywhere he went, he noticed whispers and cold stares during the day shift. A few scientists laughed about the custodian who wrecked the project, and Marcus's stomach twisted with anger. He had grown up fixing his dad's broken tools in the garage, not breaking things. Machines made sense to him. People didn't. But here he was, blamed for something he hadn't done. For Marcus, it wasn't just about losing work. It was about dignity. The unfairness hung on him, heavier than the smell of bleach on his uniform, as he walked past the tag machine again. His routine that night was restless. Normally he'd scrub quietly and get through his shift unnoticed. But now, every sound of dripping water or humming fans only reminded him of the broken machine upstairs and the sticker declaring him the problem. He hated how powerless he felt. A single note on a machine had become a judgment against his entire character. He wanted to clear his name, but speaking up would do nothing. Nobody believed janitors over scientists. Still, the thought of that machine sat heavy in his chest, daring him to look closer at it. When Marcus finally returned to the machine, he crouched beside it with his flashlight. The casing looked worn, its screws stripped from years of rushed repairs. He knew the signs. This wasn't his doing. This was poor maintenance. He ran his hand along the vented panel and felt the heat coming off the power supply. He wasn't a scientist, but he understood how parts worked. He had fixed plenty of broken radios and vacuums in his time. His anger turned into determination. If he could just figure out what had really gone wrong, maybe he could prove it. Marcus's mind went back to the way the researchers had sneered at him earlier. Custodian error was written in the logbook like it was fact. The memory lit a fire in his chest. He hated being underestimated, hated being dismissed because of his uniform. If anyone had actually listened, they'd know he had a knack for machines. He didn't need a degree to know when something was wrong. For once, he wasn't going to let their judgment stand. He unhooked his tool pouch from his cart, a small kit he kept for personal fixes, and leaned closer. It was risky. If anyone found him opening a machine worth more than his house, he'd be fired on the spot. But the anger pushed him past hesitation. He unscrewed the panel, flashlight clenched in his teeth. Inside, the wiring was sloppy, patched together from half-fixes. He adjusted one of the contacts, then another, carefully tightening bolts others had left loose. He worked methodically, steady hands, guided by instinct. This wasn't about showing off. It was about truth. For the first time in years, Marcus felt in control as the machine sat open before him. As Marcus tightened the last connector, a faint hum grew from inside the casing. The machine's dead screen flickered, glowing softly in the dark. He froze, heart pounding, afraid he had triggered something dangerous. But the hum smoothed out into a steady rhythm. The equipment wasn't just repaired, it was running stronger than before. The air in the basement shifted, like the machine was alive again. Marcus stepped back, stunned. He had meant only to fix what was broken, but something about his adjustments had changed it entirely. He had no idea what he had unleashed. The machine's interface scrolled with numbers he didn't understand, glowing brighter than he had ever seen before. Strange lines of data flashed across the screen, like the system had unlocked a hidden function. Marcus stared, not comprehending, but recognizing that this wasn't normal. He glanced toward the hallway, half expecting someone to rush in and catch him. But the building was silent, the scientists long gone. His pulse raced. He thought about shutting it down immediately, but his hands wouldn't move. Instead, he leaned closer, captivated by what he had accidentally awakened in the silent lab. Instead of fear stopping him, curiosity pulled Marcus further. He adjusted another knob, and the readings on the screen stabilized. The light settled into a calm glow, and the hum deepened, like the machine had found balance. It was almost satisfying, like tuning a guitar until it hit the perfect note. Marcus realized he wasn't just repairing, he was improving it. His small fixes had uncovered a hidden potential buried under years of sloppy work. He should have walked away. But he didn't. He kept working, following his instincts, unaware of how far-reaching this would become. The machine whirred louder, and for a moment Marcus panicked that he had broken it again. But then it leveled out, smoother than before. The display now showed stable energy output, a goal the scientists had struggled with for months. Marcus had no idea this was the breakthrough they had been chasing. To him it was just a sign that the equipment was finally working. He grabbed his rag, wiped the fingerprints off the casing, and closed the panel. As he stepped back, he couldn't help but feel a small swell of pride mixed with dread. Marcus wanted to forget it, to just clock out and leave the building, but as he pushed his cart down the hall, the glowing numbers from the screen burned into his memory. He had done something important, maybe even groundbreaking, but he couldn't prove it. And if anyone found out he'd tampered with the equipment, he'd lose everything. Still, deep down, he knew this wasn't just a repair. This was different. The weight of that realization followed him out of the lab, clinging to him long after the fluorescent lights faded behind him that night. The next morning, the scientists arrived to find the machine running perfectly, its readings better than they had ever seen. Confusion spread through the lab. No one could explain it. They assumed it had fixed itself, or that some random fluctuation had caused the improvement. Marcus, exhausted from his shift, watched silently as the researchers crowded around the machine in awe. They didn't thank anyone. They didn't even question the janitor who had been blamed the day before. Marcus rolled his mop bucket past them, listening to their excitement, and swallowed the secret burning inside him. That afternoon, the head researcher, Dr. Albright, pulled the machine logs and froze at the results. The system had stabilized at a level far beyond their projections. He knew instantly this wasn't luck. It was a breakthrough. But instead of sharing credit or asking questions, he locked the data away. He planned to claim the discovery for himself. Rewriting the logs to suggest his own late-night calibration, Marcus's role, whatever it was, would stay buried. The janitor's name was never meant to be attached to history. Albright smirked, already picturing himself in the headlines as a genius. Word began to spread quietly among the researchers. For months, the lab had been stuck, their experiments stalled. But now, out of nowhere, progress was back on track. Investors were being notified, and whispers of funding increases filled the hallways. Marcus overheard conversations while mopping floors. They didn't know what caused the breakthrough, but they were ready to celebrate it. He wanted to speak up, to say he had fixed it, but who would believe him? A janitor's word against a lab full of PhDs meant nothing. He swallowed his pride and kept working in silence. Late one evening, Marcus passed by the staff lounge and heard laughter. A group of scientists joked about the custodian miracle, mocking the idea that the janitor could have been responsible for the sudden improvement. They laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world, their voices echoing in his chest. Marcus froze in the hallway, gripping his mop handle tighter than he meant to. Their words stung more than any accusation. He didn't want their respect, but he wanted the truth recognized. Instead, they turned him into the punchline of their own success. Behind closed doors, Dr. Albright presented the data to investors, claiming the breakthrough as his own. He spoke confidently, painting himself as the visionary who had solved the problem. Investors were impressed. promising more money and resources. Marcus wasn't even mentioned. His quiet act of repair had been stolen, transformed into Albright's golden ticket. The injustice made Marcus sick, but what could he do? If he admitted to touching the machine, he'd be fired. He was trapped between silence and exposure, forced to watch someone else take credit for the invention he had accidentally sparked. As weeks passed, Marcus noticed how the lab's atmosphere changed. Scientists walked with pride, whispering about their upcoming projects. Albright became the star, constantly in the spotlight. Marcus's shifts grew heavier with resentment. He tried to bury his anger in work, but every time he saw the glowing machine, it felt like it was calling to him. He knew the truth of how it had come alive. He could see the small adjustments he had made still in place. The temptation to step in again grew, though he feared what would happen if anyone caught him. One night, curiosity won. Marcus unlocked the panel again, careful not to draw attention. This time he experimented, tweaking controls and recording what happened in a small notebook he kept hidden in his locker. To his shock, the machine responded even better, producing results beyond what it had been designed for. Marcus realized his modifications weren't just repairs, they had opened new possibilities. He didn't know the science, but he could see patterns. The machine seemed to want to work with him, like it understood his touch. He had crossed a line he couldn't step back from. The notebook became Marcus's secret. Every night, he wrote down the changes he made, sketching diagrams in shaky pencil. He didn't understand the equations, but he understood function. Slowly, he was building a record of his part in the invention. It was his insurance, proof that he wasn't imagining things. The more he wrote, the more he realized the scale of what he had unlocked. This wasn't just a lab machine anymore, it was something bigger. And yet, he was terrified. A janitor with a notebook could never stand against a respected scientist with investors behind him. As investors pressed for faster results, pressure mounted on Dr. Albright. He knew Marcus had been lingering around the machine, and paranoia crept in. He began watching the janitor more closely, dropping hints that Marcus's job was under review. Marcus noticed the shift, the suspicion in Albright's eyes. It confirmed what he feared. The man suspected he knew too much. The scientist's calm mask was cracking, and Marcus could feel the hostility beneath it. He had stumbled into a game far bigger than himself, where power and credit mattered more than honesty or loyalty. Albright finally made his move. A piece of lab equipment was found smashed, and the blame was once again directed at Marcus. The accusation came swiftly, almost too conveniently. Supervisors questioned him, their tone sharp and skeptical. Marcus insisted he hadn't touched it, but the story had already been written. It was the perfect excuse to push him out. He realized this wasn't about broken machines anymore. Albright wanted him gone, silenced before he could speak. The weight of it crushed Marcus's chest. He was running out of time, and the walls of the lab were closing in. Marcus was called into the manager's office, where he was warned sternly that one more mistake would cost him his job. The warning was clear. He was hanging by a thread. As he walked out, his mind spun. He wanted to fight, but he didn't have the education, the authority, or the voice. He had a mop bucket and a hidden notebook. That was it. The frustration burned through him. He could either walk away quietly, forgotten and erased, or risk everything by revealing what he had done. The decision weighed heavier than any shift he had worked. That night, Marcus sat in the empty lab staring at the machine, his notebook open in front of him. Fear gnawed at him, telling him to let it go, to protect himself. But his pride screamed louder. He couldn't let Albright erase him. He decided to power it on in front of witnesses. If the machine performed as he had designed it, no one could deny his role. He knew it was reckless. He knew it could destroy him. But for once, Marcus wasn't going to hide in the shadows. He would step into the light, consequences and all. Marcus waited until a group of scientists and assistants passed by on their way out. He called them into the lab casually, pretending to need help. Nervously, he switched on the machine and adjusted the controls the way he had practiced. At first it hummed low, uncertain, and for a moment he feared it would fail. But then the screen lit up, brighter than ever before. Data poured across the display, showing stability levels the scientists had only dreamed of. Gasps filled the room. They hadn't believed him capable of fixing it, yet here it was, undeniable. The room filled with stunned silence, broken only by the rhythmic hum of the machine. The scientists stared at the readings, whispering in disbelief. Marcus stepped back, his hands trembling, but his expression steady. For once he wasn't invisible. He didn't need to explain how he had shown them. The machine spoke for him. Some of the staff looked confused, others impressed, but all of them realized something important had happened. The janitor who mopped their floors had just done what none of them could. Marcus felt vindication swelling in his chest, the truth finally visible to all. Moments later, Dr. Albright stormed in, demanding to know what was going on. When he saw the glowing machine and the crowd gathered, his face turned pale. He tried to laugh it off, insisting the performance was due to his own earlier adjustments. But whispers had already started. People had seen Marcus with his notebook, seen him work the controls with confidence. The lie was cracking. Albright's authority no longer seemed untouchable. Investors who had been called into the room demanded answers, their eyes narrowing. The scientist's story no longer held power the way it once had. Marcus quietly handed over his notebook, showing the dates, sketches, and notes of his modifications. The room erupted with disbelief. The janitor had been documenting everything all along. Investors flipped through the pages, realizing the truth. Their breakthrough had been born from his hands, not Albright's speeches. The researcher stammered excuses, but no one listened anymore. His empire of lies collapsed under the weight of evidence. Marcus didn't shout, didn't gloat. He simply stood there, mop bucket in the corner, the hum of the machine echoing like a victory song that couldn't be stolen this time. In the weeks that followed, the truth spread beyond the lab. Marcus Vance, the janitor once mocked and accused, became the name attached to a discovery that would change the future of their work. He was no longer invisible, though the recognition came with mixed feelings. He hadn't wanted fame, just fairness. The betrayal still stung, and he knew he would never truly fit into their world. But as he walked past the machine he had once repaired in silence, he felt something different now, not pride exactly, but peace. His hands had written his own legacy. If this story of redemption struck a chord, consider subscribing for more.